Camp earlier today, and now we have the technique camp here. So, just introduce myself a little. I'm a former wrestling coach here. It's been a while. I really haven't gone too far away. Kind of sticking close to Iowa wrestling and also USA wrestling, World Olympic wrestling. And so you can see I'm pretty much had my hands full in the last year where we were kind of booted out of the Olympics potentially. And people, the bottom line is, we're a tough group of athletes. You know, we're a competitive, tough group of athletes. We are individually on the mat, one at a time. And sometimes, you know, we think we can get by that way with our total sport. Just not paying attention to all the details, just doing what we have to do. And, you know, that's fine. But we found out it's not fine from the total sport. There's a lot of things that needed to be done in our sport and wasn't being done because one guy was in control of a certain group, and we needed the whole team effort. And so it was the first time really in the history of the sport that I know in wrestling, at least Olympic wrestling, where we bonded as a team. That means the whole world came together. The 180 countries that are sanctioned Olympic wrestling came together, and we used our resources, we used our abilities, and we won the vote on the first round, which they have several rounds of voting usually in those types of situations, and so we kind of dominated. But it took 6 months of togetherness. I'm a little concerned because 6 months was a good start, but you need it forever in your sport. Especially what they needed to find to be able to make the kind of decisions to help her, so they closed the book. So I got a little lucky. I was outside, and my neighbor, I knew he was involved at the University Hospitals, and I was just talking, kind of told him the story about my mom. And he said, why don't you this is a Friday night, he said, why don't you bring her into my office on Sunday, because we don't have a clinic, and I'll take a look at her. I said, well, what's your expertise? And he said, otolaryngology, and I had never even heard of that word until my mother caught this cancer, in the throat area. And so I said, well, that's the same area that, that they can't find the source. So on Sunday, I walk in with my mom to this guy's office. Nobody's there but him. He walks in. He's coming right off the ranch. He didn't dress up that day. He puts this light on his head and he walks in the room. He's in there 3 minutes. He walks out and I help him. You need something? Doc? Oh, no, I found the source. I think I can take care of her. I'm pretty sure I can. It's going to be a pretty radical surgery, but I think I can get it. It looks to me like it's located right there. And whoa, they just closed the book on this lady? And you were there for 3 minutes, and you're telling me this? Oh, wow. I mean, there's differences out there in excellence. You got to know that. And she lived another 18 years. She lived another 18 years. And a pretty quality life, actually. And at the time I had 2 kids, 2 daughters, and ended up having 2 more, so she was able to share her life with all 4 of my daughters. And the really important point was that in her life, right in her house, her only daughter was murdered when she was young. And so it's like, wow, that's unbelievable. That's excellence. That's excellence. I mean, in Iowa, we just had a statue unveiled in Washington, D.C. of a guy named Norman Borlaug from northeast Iowa, Cresco, Iowa, went to the University of Minnesota. And what he did was he discovered a process to feed the underprivileged countries in the world, and he saved 1 billion lives. That's excellence. I mean, I was speaking to a group of Indian people from India. They do an exchange with Iowa, and they had me come over there. I mentioned his name. They knew more about him than I did.
the only thing they didn't realize was he was also a wrestler, and gave credit to him being able to work extra hard and having the disciplines to be able to find how to create this type of food from this type of experimentation. And he gives wrestling all the credit, he said. I mean, some of the greatest people in the world as far as like at a high excellence, a guy like John Irving, who's a writer, has given wrestling. He said, "You think I learned my discipline to work extra hard, be disciplined in writer school?" No, I'm not saying writer school, it's tough. But he said, "I learned it through wrestling. I had to, you had to master, making weight, you had to nutrition. It's a hard conditioning aspect. You have to be flexible, you need to be strong, you need to be explosive. You need to learn all these moves that people don't know. It's just," he said, it was wrestling, that really helped me. So anyway, I was reading an article the other day. It was a really pretty famous writer. And so, I respect everybody. Everybody's got their own beliefs. Everybody can wrestle their own way, and I want to make sure that you can do that and have that ability. But there's also essentials and things like that. But the guy was saying, adversity's really good for you. Adversity's really good for you. The more adversity, the better. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. Adversity to me means that something happens in a negative manner that probably shouldn't have happened. Everybody's going to face it sometime. Whether it's on the mat, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's life, whether it's death. But you don't want it to happen very often. And so when something does happen, you've got to analyze it to the point where whatever you were doing before, mistakes-wise or whatever it was, you've got to change that. And then you've got to have some patience of change. And what's that mean? That means you've got to go for a certain amount of days to where it becomes a habit, a good habit. It's just like I just read the other day that people that go on diets, whether it could be a wrestler, it could be people in life, the average length of the diet is 4 days. That's the average length on a national study. And so they really haven't given themselves a chance to even adjust at all whatsoever. So you want to be a better wrestler? You want to come to camp? You want to go to training camps? You put in a day, every day you put it in hard. And then you take it with you at home, you take some notes, you go home, you continue to do some things. I'm not saying you have to focus just on wrestling, but over time, things are going to happen and change. I mean, look at some of the greatest athletes you ever. Look at Michael Jordan. I mean, he was one of 200 great athletes, one of 300, one of 400. Then all of a sudden, the third or fourth year in the NBA, he became like the best. All of a sudden, he put in enough time where even a guy that's already good could jump to a new level. And you just don't know what that is. And so that's what this is all about here. You're at a camp. You're at a takedown escape camp. Those are essentials. You're going to fine-tune those. You're here for a training camp, and you're going to actually do some of the training that you actually do like during the season, and you'll learn more. And it's just part of the total excellence. But what you do is you take it with you. I mean, I'm not saying you go home, you go off for other sports. In fact, I recommend that you probably go off for other sports unless you're a total fanatic. Then you really have to find ways to make sure that you can stay in there. But this adversity stuff, it can help once in a while. Like, okay, so I went 7 years, then I had a loss. Then I got good. Okay? I kind of needed that loss. I was off focus. I thought I could win automatically. It's just, one of those things. So then as a coach, we had 9 straight national titles. I should have learned through wrestling, but coaching's different than wrestling. And all of a sudden, in coaching, we had a loss. Didn't win a national title. And the funny thing was, there's a term called the longer. And that means when you know something isn't going right for you and you do nothing about it, the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take for you to get back on top. So as soon as we lost that year, we took second. Well, we're going to win next year. Well, I had been making mistakes for the year before that, the year before that, and the year before that. So we were still winning because we had some really good talent, and we still had a pretty good system, but it wasn't quite as good as it was before. It was getting pulled down a little bit, and it took us, so we didn't win it for 5 more years. Well, we were close to winning. But it took about 5 years to bring it down. It took about 5 years to bring it back up. Don't ever think that way. Don't ever think that way. So you're in your high school and you win it, your freshman, your sophomore year, and you lose your junior. Don't ever think it's going to take, you kind of analyze it. You always hope it comes quicker, but you just don't know. And that longer the longer, so the quicker you can step in and make some changes in your life, the better that you are. So, anyway, this book here is a book I've been reading most of it lately. It's from the Harvard Business School. It's How to Create a Culture of Excellence. It's actually, I've been through it my whole life. And so everything in here I can almost relate totally with. So it's like if a guy was never, a young kid was 21 or 17 and tried to read this, you're taking it for what its word is. But I can live this. Between being an athlete for 10 years, could be a coach for 25, it's like, wow, it's pretty good stuff. And I can relate with it, really well. There's some things in there I don't totally agree with, but there's lots of things that I can actually see happen in my life. So it's pretty, it's pretty good to stay after. This is the book that I read a lot when I was a kid, actually. And this is more about learn how to compete, learn how to have a good way of life. The book's called The Heart of a Champion, and it's by Bob Richards. And he's a Olympic pole vault champion, but he was also a minister. And he doesn't really do a lot of preaching in there. He mostly talks about a good way of life. But he talks about a lot of things in there that is pretty impressive. How people break records, how people broke 4 minute mile. There's just lots of good things in there. And you can actually feel the event when it's taking place when you get into it. So it's a pretty good reading, on those types of things. So then, kind of wrote up a few things about leadership, because you know what? You can be a team member, and you can have 13 other guys on your team. You can go to college, you can have 9 guys on your team, and some of your best chances is if you kind of step up, take some leadership roles. You learn a lot. Because you know why? You're going to need to take leadership roles sooner or later in your life. Okay? You're going to be getting married. You're going to take a leadership role. And you're going to have kids. You're going to take a leadership role. You're going to have a job. What kind of job you want? Do you want to always have to go and be the guy that's being told what to do all the time? Or do you want to take some leadership roles? And you're here at this camp. And that's why I think you're unique, because a lot of kids aren't going to camp. Maybe some kids can't afford to go to camp, but I think most of the people here probably had some pretty good leadership anyway. So I wrote down a few leadership things here that I'll throw at you. Leadership. It's about being the first one there and the last one to leave. It's about being the hardest worker, over time adding the smartest as well. First to arrive, last to leave, hardest and smartest worker. Now, as you get older, you get smarter. Sometimes you don't have to be the first to arrive, but you have somebody there that's covering you, that gives you all the information. You got to get smart over time. That's just the way things work. And that's what a team does. And that's what other good people to help do. So, leadership is knowing your subject. And that's why you're here. You're trying to learn more about wrestling. So leadership is knowing your subject. And then, if you ever stay in the sport, become a lifer, you're a coach, or when you go on out of wrestling and you go on to whatever you do in your profession, you still got to know that subject inside out. And if you're a leader at all, then you got to know your subjects. So I got to know wrestling, and then if you're my team, I got to know you guys. I got to know you well. So
So I'm just giving you some advice, because when you know people well, then you can actually give better advice. And that's what coaching is all about. And so it's like this guy here, I know that he can shoot a really good high crotch and switch off to double. You know, I don't know what that guy can do that. Because I never did a high crotch, doesn't mean he shouldn't. But there's perfection in all skills and techniques, and you always want to work on that. And so it's basically knowing your subject, and it's staying current with both. And that's why you're at the camp. You want to stay current with some good people that know the sport. You got guys here that are national champs. You got guys here that are Olympic champs. You got guys here that are world champs. You got guys here that are currently on the world team at the junior world championships, at the senior world level, and at the university world level. So you got some good people that are around here that are right on top of their game, or they're trying to get on top of the game. There's another step yet, and that's actually winning the gold medals at those events. And so it's not just being on the team, but you got to take one step at a time. Okay, leadership also means positively affecting the masses, so they will do the same, and so on and so on. Just like I'm saying here, right now, I'm trying to positively affect you guys, trying to help you out. Just, through reputation, through communication, just to help you out. And you're going to do the same eventually. Right now, you're going to positively affect your team if you do pretty well. And you're going to positively affect all the people that hang around you. If you lead a good life. And then when you get married, you absolutely want your family to be positively affected. That's real critical. One of the key things in my life is that I have a circle of life, and it's both my athletic and coaching profession and my family's in the same circle. So that's pretty lucky. That doesn't happen very often. Sometimes it's like just people go their own different ways. But for some reason, everybody, even the son-in-laws that I get in there now, they all like the sport of wrestling. And so it's been a little bit easier. So I'm a little lucky too. But I think you get lucky by making your own breaks, by being prepared. It's not like I'm going out and trying to win a raffle. Or, there's a million tickets here and I pick one out of a million. You kind of make your own breaks in this type of stuff. So I talked about adversity, and I'm just going to give you a sentence on that. Adversity, take it on. Take it on. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. Because it's not just W's and L's, it's also life and death. So I'm just telling you, it's easier. You don't want to have a choice. You don't want to have an or. Take that out of there. Just take it on. And like I said, you have to work on it. And then lastly, leadership. I think this is what's really key about, say, my career as an athlete and all the athletes that I ever coached. The last thing in leadership is called recovery. And that means on a daily basis. So you can wake up the next day ready to go. And that means simple. Some people think, oh, we're going to, these people that work all these hard jobs or any type of job, they're looking for relief, so they're going to fly into Canada, and take their buddies, and they're going to go fishing for a week, and they're going to come home, and they think that's going to last 365 days out of 7 days. No, it's not. You got to do something on a daily basis with your life. And you got to know, you figure out what that is. For me, I've never stopped liking to work out, for an example. Or for me, it's like, just building a cabin in my backyard. So I have an office there, but it's like this cabin, instead of having to go once a year up north, I can go every day. I can use it. And so it kind of revives me and on a daily basis. So, and the teams, say for example, you're my team and I put you through an unbelievable hard workout. I'll give you an example of recovery. Well, when practice is over, instead of running in the shower and running out to home, when practice is over, you got a massage, jump in the cold plunge, you got a steam, you turn the hot water on, turn the cold water on, you set it on relax, and you thought about what you did today and what you want to do tomorrow. And so you're spending maybe an extra hour on recovery, but it's getting you ready to go way more than the guy that just hurries in, hurries out, doesn't analyze. See, it's not just physical, it's mental as well. Mental thoughts about, my gosh, this guy took me down twice today with this sleep cycle, what did I do wrong? I'm thinking, probably learning before I leave, and I'm in the sauna, sitting there thinking about it. I'm advancing more than the next guy. Advancing, that's very important. And what it does is it prevents a lot of things that could happen in your life when you're just doing that mental type of preparation. So anyway, lastly, I used to measure I got my own family, but my family professor in the same circle. So it's like, yeah, I had trouble with one daughter maybe, or maybe all of them, but one more than the other probably, just as far as like, does she really like me? For years, didn't think so. But I didn't give up on her because she's family. She don't want to give up on anybody. And all of a sudden, because she stayed the course, things changed and happened for the better. You just don't give up on things that are really important to you in life. So I used to measure a lot of things in W's and L's. And, that's still nice to do that. Because that can put you in a unique category. But now I'm kind of looking at this team here, and yeah, when your wrestling days are done, I'm checking you out to see how you're doing in your family. I'm checking how you're doing in your job, and one of you guys might not have done so well in wrestling. In fact, you might not even been able to wear the uniform to be able to represent your team, but you were a team member. I've got guys like that, and I measure them now on what they're doing currently, not when they weren't making the team. And they were there, they're putting out hard, and then all of a sudden they look at the record books, and that guy's name's not in the record books. But you know what? That guy might be in the record books today. He might be the top person in this company. He might be a CEO somewhere. It's like Borlaug, it's like Irby. You got something you go back on. And this gave you that ability to carry it forward to be good in your lifetime. And so I'm kind of measuring. And there's some guys yet that have been really good wrestlers that I'm still worried about a little bit. There's a couple. There's a few. So your work's not really ever done. I mean, with your family, it should be never done. With your profession, if you really are a leader in that area, you pretty much follow your people forever. And it makes a big difference. And I have a lot of guys that are really doing well. And that's how I measure really where they are and how they're doing today as compared to when they were here 20 years ago in wrestling. And that's important. And then you're going to affect the world. And I'm going to end it on this. My mom and dad sent me to wrestling camp, believe it or not, at the University of Iowa, even though I went to Iowa State. And yeah, that was good. But depending on where you're born in the world, depending on where you are born in the world, your mom and dad could be sending you to terrorist camp. There's terrorist camps in the world for kids like you. And if you go back to that leadership, positively affected the masses. If you do your job, you affect hundreds of lives, then we're actually trying to get rid of that type of situation. It'd be nice in the world if we didn't have to pick up a paper every day and read about people killing other people in masses, their beliefs, and I don't believe in that. But it's your surroundings, it's your environment, and you're lucky enough to be born in an environment that gives you a lot of good
things, that's great, but there are lots of people yet that we haven't affected. So that positively affected mass is still a long ways to go. So I don't know how many people I've affected in my lifetime, but just take, I'm gonna end to just take it and see how many people that you're gonna affect positively in your lifetime. And maybe when you're older, you push, I'm pushing 35 or something like that, I'm not sure how old I am yet. But another 15, 20 years, you know, see where you're at in your life, just how well you've done from, and how the world will kind of shape the world. So anyway, that's about it. I don't know if anybody had any questions, otherwise we're gonna get on to